To my left is our incredible 8-figure CEO, Anthony Milton. And on our first episode of our new show, 100% Tilted, Stories with Winning Underdogs. Today we have our first episode we're excited about here in December of a chilly Houston, Texas, which is kind of unusual. It'll last about a week. But the other reason why we're really excited is we have a champion of all Texans, and fitting for our episode 1 of this new show, who is Texas State House of Representatives District 15, business owner, entrepreneur, husband, father, grandfather, and pastor, and friend to many, Mr. Steve Toth. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Going good.
Good.
Well, a lot's going on right now. We got a lot to talk about, a lot of things happening in this city, this state, this country. But I think, for a lot of us, and I know for anybody that's in business, and anybody that's just paying attention, there is friction many times between the perspectives of being a citizen and those that represent us. I think people are becoming more aware of really what their vote can do versus just enabling a few to elect those that represent the many, which I think awareness is good. Awareness with action is better. But there is this kind of disconnect, this separation between the citizen, the business owner, and the politicians. But we're having some politicians like yourself that are becoming vocal. I mean, you stood with us back in May when we opened up, tuned up the Manly Salon here in Magnolia, store number 1, that opened back in October of 2015. And you stood with us when we kind of waited for the authorities to show up to enforce some mandates from our governor.
We couldn't wait to get involved. I was just so angry because if this was really about the data and the science, why are we putting these people out of business when the data is telling us the exact opposite, that this is not where the spread is occurring. It's occurring at home. Mm-hmm. It's not occurring at bars. It's not occurring at restaurants. It's not occurring at salons.
Mm-hmm. On the Wikipedia page, it actually talks about that a little bit. On your Wikipedia page, it says, in August 2020, Toth, along with fellow state reps, sued Texas Governor Greg Abbott over a $295 million COVID-19 contact tracing contract Abbott awarded to a Frisco, Texas technology firm without approval from the Texas legislature. In May, Toth protested Abbott's lockdown order by getting a haircut.
And you know what's insane about that thing though is that months later, Nancy Pelosi got her haircut, and they're equating what I did with what she did. And I'm like, no, guys, she got it done in secret. She was the one saying, y'all should not, the great unwashed should not be able to get their haircut. Mm-hmm. But no haircuts, for thee, but not for me kind of deal. Mm-hmm. I did it publicly is a message that what the government had done was they had overstepped their bounds. Mm-hmm. They're not allowed to tell people who can and can't work. That rights don't come from the state of Texas. They don't come from the federal government. They're granted to us by nature's God, our founding fathers said. Therefore, the government doesn't get to tell you if you can live. They don't get to tell you if you can sing. They don't get to tell you if you can dance. They don't get to tell you if you can work. That's up to you. We had no right to infringe on your ability to employ 600 people and to let them make a decent standard of living for themselves. Mm-hmm. It was just wrong.
You took a position that was a pretty good odds with the governor, same position that we took, that when it comes to the governor's rights and powers, there's the Constitution of the state of Texas, and there's a Powers Act. And we're aligned with respect to this should have been a legislative issue.
Right.
And the governor is still of the opinion that it's his sole discretion with respect to the opening and the closing. Walk me through how that's either benefited or hurt your political capital, your friends in Austin.
I had a great session last year. I mean, I passed a lot of really great legislation. Senator Creighton and I passed the Jones Forest Preservation Act, which is going to keep Jones Forest just right across the street from y'all from being developed. We thought that was a key thing. I passed a bill that creates an ethics panel for Montgomery County and similar counties of our size that enables them to actually have the ability to lead full-blown investigations into government corruption. We created another bill that passed, became law, that forces local governments, county governments, to disclose how much of our tax dollars are being used to pay lobbyists in Austin that actually work against the will of the people. We got a lot done, and it was really exciting. And then to come into a session like this, where all of a sudden you're at odds with the governor, was not something I was looking forward to, because it's going to mean that, you know, my ability to pass legislation this session is going to become, you know, it's dwindled greatly. So I'm not excited about it, but at the end of the day, I feel like I did the right thing. That, you know, I'm called a representative. I'm not called predominantly, I'm not called a legislator. I'm a state representative, which means I represent the people of House District 15, its businesses, and its families. And that's who I answer to, not the governor.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your goal for this legislative session is to propose a bill that would narrow the scope of the governor's powers in an act of emergency to only 30 days.
Yeah, so kind of getting back to your original question, his powers were derived from an act that happened in like 73 or 74, and it was basically in the event of a hurricane. It was in the event of a wildfire, some kind of natural disaster, flooding, where he could take several counties and declare a disaster for 30 to 60 days. It wasn't so that he could take over the entire state of Texas and every single individual's life and business and run them out of business. It was never intended for that. In fact, the Constitution grants him the ability to call a special session so that we can call co-equal branches of government, and that's what the legislature is. It's a co-equal branch. It was never intended for this. And think about this for a second, guys. What if someone becomes governor one day and says, wow, I think that oil and gas is an existential danger, and we're going to shut oil and gas down in the state of Texas? What's to stop them from doing that? I mean, he has created a precedence that is so far out of bounds from what the legislative intent was on his government powers. So we're going to have to trim that back a little bit.
That's a great idea. We talked a little about before the show, and we talked about it on the last podcast, with the county judges and the individual mayors having vastly different opinions. You took over the Texas seat from Mark Keogh.
Right.
Our county judge here in Montgomery County. Great guy, great ethics, very, very forthcoming, very honest, very transparent. And his opinion is the hospitals are fine. The police force, it's not their job to police individual businesses, especially private businesses. So we're going to let the businesses be in their own. We're going to let them decide. We're going to support and help where we need to support and help. But by and large, Montgomery County is open for business.
Right.
Then you go across down south to Harris County, across a small river, and it's almost the complete opposite.
Yeah. And here's the really, you know, they're in a code red, right, which is the highest level of fear and danger. Well, what if this really was like the Spanish flu of 1918, where you're going to see 1 million deaths, and law enforcement, first responders would be completely overwhelmed? My fear is that moving forward is that no one's going to take us seriously again. The next time something like this happens, no one will take us seriously, and they're going to say, "Screw it, you fed us a line last time to control us, and you know, we're not going to go along with it."
From a private citizen and from a private business, I'll tell you that a lot of my counterparts and people that I communicate with are losing faith on nearly every level of government, whether it be the city level, the state level, the county level, or the federal level. You know, one of the things that the Powers Act gave the governor was the ability to declare a state of emergency that would, in theory, provide quickly resources and essential needs to the disaster area.
Right.
So if a hurricane hits in Galveston, he can create Galveston County as a declaration of disaster.
So FEMA money can come in
immediately.
Right away. Yep.
But over the course of 7, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, we've seen some assistance and some guidance in the beginning, but nothing since then. No guidance, no direction, no thought processes from a federal level or from a state level. And I'll tell you, it's frustrating from a business side because they're trying to have it both ways. We only have so much runway and so much capital that we can dispose.
The problem is they've created a monster, and now they don't know how to control it. They don't know what to do with it. We were told 2.2 million deaths with no shutdown. 1.1 million deaths with a complete and total shutdown. That's what we're told. We're at 300,000. We're told 1.1 million after the first year. And yet what's interesting is that in 2020, we'll have 20,000 fewer deaths than projected. So typically the United States grows by about 40,000 deaths per year. The death rate grows 40,000 a year. We're going to have 20,000 fewer than projected, even with COVID.
Numbers don't add up.
Those are CDC numbers. Those are CDC projected numbers. Those are not my numbers. I know there's a bogus meme that's going around Facebook right now that shows 100,000 fewer deaths. That's not true. It's 20,000 fewer deaths, and those are CDC numbers connected to the CDC website. Goes out in my email that I send out every week. And so, the problem, though, is that no one wants to hear any good news because they have done such a great job of scaring the hell out of everybody in the first few months of this thing, feeding them all this misinformation about mobile morgues and everything else, that now no one wants to hear any good news. No one wants to hear any good positive data out of this thing. And so these guys just don't know what to do. So that's why there's no guidance. There's no direction whatsoever because they don't know what to do with it. They've created this monster of hysteria, and now they don't know how to manage people through this thing.
One other thing that's necessary is from you're never going to stop interstate travel. I travel pretty frequently, airlines, road travel.
Right.
I was in Tampa Airport 3 weeks ago, getting an update on a couple of our locations, and across there was a United flights. So there's 8 terminals, and every single one is a different state. So you're coming from Florida to New York City to New Jersey to Houston to Atlanta. So the interstate travel is never going to stop, and I don't think there's the ability for any governor or the federal level to stop travel between Texas and Louisiana as a specific example. But within the state, my argument and my thought process is that there's such wildly different views between the mayors and the judges that if the legislature came together and created the parameters for a shutdown and then created the parameters for an opening, then it'd be actual law that would be enacted that no mayor, that no city council, no judge would have any ability to do other than conform, or private citizens for that matter.
That's what my bill does, though. It limits uniformly across Texas, which that would have to happen at the federal level as well, which I love to see that. I mean, I've got to give Trump credit for one of the things that he said early on in this thing in March. He said, we're going to make sure that the cure doesn't take more lives than the actual pandemic. And it is right now. I mean, I'm on the board of directors for Mighty Oaks. We help veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. We've seen a 30% increase in the number of suicides among active duty guys. We have no idea. We think there may be as much as a 50% increase in suicides among veterans, which was 22 a day before the pandemic. Go ahead and throw millions of these guys out of work, take away their ability to be involved in these support groups, which are a lifeline for these guys, then just say, hey, just go home and drink and watch Netflix. What could go wrong with that? And that's basically what we've done to these guys. It's criminal.
Isolation can be very dangerous.
Isolation isn't healthy for a healthy person. Take someone with post-traumatic stress disorder, clinical depression, and substance use disorder, and you're killing them.
With a lot of the mask mandating, there are a lot of individuals that, they'll use a mask in therapy to actually induce stress to help people with anxiety. And now you're forcing so many people to wear these masks that are not used to wearing these masks, and it's creating somewhat of a stressful situation already because, there's not really any sanitization standards. And we ran into that where, as a company, our standards, with Tune Up the Manly Salon, with martinis and manicures, even with balanced foods, we operate with food handling and then with sanitization standards from the TDLR, we already operate at a higher level that even standards require. Right. And then when you look in the public and you see, credit card machines with some film over them that everybody's touching. You see, people gloved up, masked up, visored up, and then they're touching every surface and they touch their phone and then they put their phone to their face. There's just a lot of these things that don't make sense.
It's just total cross-contamination, but we're supposed to feel better because that guy had rubber gloves on or latex gloves.
And yet, surgical centers, even elective surgeries, whether, elective carries a very broad term, but you go into surgery, that is the most sanitary environment you could ever be in.
Right.
And yet they're not allowed to do those. It's very strange in how people have adopted out of fear that's leading them. And then in this state of fear, they don't know what to do, so that it's like this constant state of panic.
Well, and it's government has to act like they've got this under control, right? And so when there was an uptick a month or so ago, restaurants were at, it's funny, we went from 50% capacity with restaurants to 75%, but we kept the same distancing requirements, right? So restaurants, unless they can be completely open 100%, they can't make it. They just cannot make it. And so even when we went from 50 to 75%, the most they could do is add maybe 3 or 4 tables and get to maybe 60% because of the distancing deal. And so they were still absolutely, totally struggling. And then the governor went and backed it down again to 50%. Why did he do that? The reality is that it's to show, it's to say to the people, look, we've got this. We can handle this. The polling was saying that, that government had to shut and close things down, even though the data doesn't support any of that. Even though the data shows very clearly that 80% of the infections are happening at home among people that it's not gatherings. It's not even large gatherings. It's not religious gatherings. It's not concerts. It's not big gatherings of any kind. It's when people are clustered in a home over extended periods of time, long extended. It's not a party. It's just gathering at home over a long extended period of time. It's not about the data. It's not about the information. It's just it's so frustrating.
It's like if social distancing worked, then the numbers wouldn't be going up. If the mask worked, numbers wouldn't be going up. If isolation worked, numbers would not be going up. And yet the death rate is going down.
Dramatically.
So when you take a step back with a 90,000-foot view and go, wait a minute, like none of this adds up. And this overstepping, overreaching, and even when you say, when the governor says restaurants have to step back to 50% capacity when their leases aren't reduced by 50%, their construction costs aren't reduced by 50%, they still have their operational requirements as a business. Where we are in our economic state was based on just this bare economy, there was just money, there was customers, the economy was strong, and all of a sudden brought to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
As a business, as a small business, as a restaurateur, as a salon owner, as any business owner, my question, and I'm sure a lot of people ask this, the governor says 50% capacity, but is that law? Can they stand up and go, no, I'm going to allow everybody into my business because this is my business as a private citizen? Their business is not owned by the
governor
state.
does not have the right. I took an oath to defend the Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic. When the founders of Texas and the founders of this republic said, you take an oath to defend the state and the nation against enemies, both foreign and domestic. Who are domestic enemies of the Constitution? Who are they? Not a rhetorical question. Who are they? Well, they're politicians. They're office holders that overstep their bounds. And one of the things that Payne said early on, he said, let no more be heard of confidence in men, but let us bind them down with the chains of the Constitution to protect us from their foolishness. And that's the reality, is that this is the foolishness of humanity and leaders, that we think that we can control other people, that we can tell them what to do, that we in some way, shape, or form can ensure security in our land by controlling people. We can't. I mean, there's no correlation. You look at California and New York never really ever opened compared to Texas. But New York's on fire today, again. They've never really opened. Well, we've been opened, and the only place that Texas is really struggling, we're not struggling in Houston. We're not struggling here in the Woodlands. We're struggling down on the border. We're struggling because northern Mexico is on fire right now with COVID. And there's little to no treatment that's given to people early on while the viral load is low.
So let's talk about, treatment with this, rapid push of this vaccination, right? There's questions, when there's 3 phases through determining the efficacy of a treatment or a pharmaceutical, right? And looking at the protocols that go into place when it takes 5 to 10 years to determine if something's going to be safe. Then you have the 60 seconds of a 90-second commercial telling you the side effects as people are smiling and playing in the park, right?
Yeah.
we don't have that. It's very unknown. Now, there's a lot of, who knows, misinformation floating around through memes and whatnot. But to look at a vaccination now that's been created and ready and distributed within less than 9 months.
Hey, what could go wrong with something that developed under warp speed?
Are you going to take the vaccine?
No, I'm not. And that's just a personal decision. I'm not going to try and discourage anybody else from taking it. But
Sure.
my personal decision, I've got several friends that have developed COVID that had many comorbidity issues, and they got treatment early on, and they're fine. And if I develop COVID, I'm going to do the same thing, and so will my wife.
Mm-hmm. There certainly seems to be this underlying narrative that it may be required. I was actually in Target about a week and a half ago with my kids, getting some medicine for my little one. And I heard the pharmacist or pharmacy tech tell this couple, yeah, we're going to be asking for your driver's license when the vaccine is ready, because we're going to be putting everything into a database so that anytime you travel, you go anywhere, they're going to be able to check to see if you've actually been vaccinated for COVID. I don't know about you, but that scares the living hell out of me.
It should. It absolutely should. Yeah. Yep. That's crazy.
Won't be able to cross the border because I don't have a certain dot on my driver's license where they can do a check. Well, you can't fly, you've not been vaccinated.
Yeah.
It's like we're in a different age, man. It is scary.
Years ago, they used to call it the flu shot, and now they call it the flu vaccine. From what I can gather, it's the exact same thing. And I've always opted out of that every single year. I've opted my kids out of every single year as well, because I just didn't think it was necessary. There's certain vaccines, that polio vaccine is an example, that's completely necessary. It's been proven over the course of 90 years, I think it's been out. Reduced the mortality rate, limited negativity on it. With respect to the flu shot, the flu vaccine, my opinion is very, very similar to that of a COVID vaccine, is that if you eat healthy, you live a healthy lifestyle, you take your supplements, take your vitamins, wash your hands. People shouldn't be told to wash their hands. Restaurants shouldn't have to be. Well, and I use this in my initial pod speak, right? So you hear this thought process. Well, all these companies.
I don't know. Maybe some guys do. When they leave the bathroom, you're like, "Come on, dude, wash your hands." You're watching this guy just walk out. You didn't wash his hands. I'm like, come on.
This newfound, we've increased our sanitation practices. We've revitalized our health. Hotels, chains, and restaurants do it. And my question to them is always, what the hell were they doing before?
Yeah.
Right. How subpar was the health standards of that establishment before that all of a sudden now you have this revitalization or this thought process to increase it? And it's the same thing for COVID. So I'm also not going to take the vaccine. I don't think it's going to be mandatory. I don't know how they could possibly do it.
Well,
I don't know how they will do.
It's like what you just said, right? They're not going to let you on an airline unless you've had it, or they won't let you into a concert hall unless you've had it.
So I think that's one of the things between public government and private enterprise, is that private enterprise, we have the ability to refuse service for any customer.
Right.
Obviously, there's certain things we can't refuse service because of the color of their skin or the gender or the sexual orientation. But if you come in and you're drunk and you're acting like an asshole, yeah, here's the door. You're out. I have the ability to refuse service, or you have the ability to not build a pool for somebody if they're not the right personality for you. But conversely, I go to Sam's Club quite often, and they require masks. I elect to shop at Sam's Club, so I abide by their rules and I wear a mask. Just like I abide by the rules of wearing a shirt and shoes inside of it. So I think that's important for private industry to be able to maintain those freedoms.
Yeah, that's their call.
And if United Airlines or some other airlines requires you to have a vaccine to fly, there's going to be other options.
Right.
And what will happen, and this is one of the great things about this state and this country, is that all these options always pop up. And if company A requires you to have this, and there's enough people that don't want to do it, then there's going to be company B that is created out of the necessity, out of the market requirements.
We made a post on our social media for Balanced Foods that no customer will ever be required to wear a mask. We're not going to create conflict because of your personal decision, right? The comments and the shares went off the chart. You just earned my business for life. Like we honestly were kind of prepared for some negative blowback.
Right.
Nothing of the sort. It was actually a little humbling to see the community support going, wow, I have no idea who you are, but you just earned my business. Just over and probably for a week, just the community came out. And then, of course, you have the one or two Karens from time to time.
Right.
They have
I just couldn't imagine a scenario where I, as a business owner, would put my employees in the position to attempt to force a customer to do something.
I mean, look at what just happened on United. With
that 2-year-old.
With the 2-year-old. The 2-year-old, they made every effort to keep the mask on their 2-year-old. and it just wouldn't happen. They kicked him off the flight.
A 2-year-old.
Yeah. Now, to me, that seems like some kind of mandate within a company where you've never had kids. A 2-year-old trying to keep something on their face?
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me.
So I want to transition a little bit into two topics, but the same wording, but different phrasing of it. Politics in money, and then money in politics. And we'll start with the second one. Money in politics kind of rules the day.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm sure, and I want to get your opinion on it, but from a voter and from a private citizen, this frustrates, I think, probably the general populace, is this consistent and constant handout. I need you to donate. I need money. I need capital. I need to be able to outspend the other opponent. I need more commercial TV time. I need more airtime, and all of it requires dollars.
Right.
So it feels like it's kind of constantly, you're the constant Salvation Army.
I know, and that's it's really the hard part of it, but it's also like a necessary evil. When I ran for office back in 2011, when I made the decision, I went up against somebody that had, I think I raised and spent $47,000. He spent $400,000. Right, so he outspent me, 10-1, but I still won. And so it's not like you have to have as much money, but you've got to have enough money. And while my money didn't end up coming from the political action committees, it all came from private citizens. $1 here, $10 here. Someone pitches in $1,000. It's a huge, huge donation. Meanwhile, you're going up against establishment politicians that are getting $100,000 donations, literally. And it's tough. It's brutal.
What year did you run against Kevin Brady for his Congress seat?
2016.
So I read a little bit, 2016, and help me fill in the blanks here. You raised something like $89,000.
175.
175, and got 37% of the vote. He spent $1.5 million.
Well, he spent $1.5 million, and then the speaker's PAC spent probably another $1.5 million. So that was spent for him. The key thing, it was a 4-man race though, right? And so he only got 52.9% of the vote. It was a really tight race. It came this close to going into a runoff.
How good does it feel for you? Because you've done this several times in I'm assuming your professional career, but also in your public career, when you're up against something that's much larger than you. The force of PACs and established candidates and certain large companies' favorites. You're the odd man out, and you've underraised, and you've probably thought to yourself you're underpromoted, and you haven't got enough TV time, and you're going to let your constituents down, but you still come out victorious.
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 6. Right, so I was
definitely a winning underdog.
I was the runt in the family. I'm the shortest. I'm the youngest. I'm not Steve. I'm Stevie. To my older brothers and sisters, and even still to this day, at 60 years of age, I'm still Stevie, and I'm okay with it. But I was all keep quiet. You know what you're talking about. You're the youngest. And it's kind of like, man, I've been used to that my whole life. And you can't succeed, you can't get it, you can't win. And it was a blessing. It was really a blessing because it really taught me perseverance from a very early age.
There it is. Yeah, that's that driver.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I got it from my dad. My dad was the youngest of 8. And he was a state champion speed skater.
No kidding.
He was 5'6", 5'7", and just...
on ice skating?
Yeah,
no
he
kidding.
Was a speed skater in upstate New York.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Went into the Merchant Marines and was a boxer, the flyweight class, and he was the champion on his ship.
You're talking his language now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just it's funny because in the Capitol, all the lobbyists have derogatory names that they don't want, because they belittle the reps, and rightly so, we deserve it. And they have like nicknames for us, like Dances with Wolves, right? If you've seen that movie with Kevin Costner.
Oh, yeah.
Mine was Rep Who Runs, because I don't have my gait is I don't walk. I just move really quickly. That's my speed. And if I'm not moving fast all day long, it wears me out. If I have a slow day and I'm just standing around doing nothing, it kills me. I can't do it.
Was that basically your your momentum of survival as a kid, trying to run to the table to get food that was
Yes,
left?
it was. It was. The only time I got more than enough food was when Mom served liver.
So, politics and money, to switch the words around. Politics and money. Texas has a rainy day fund.
Right.
Massive rainy day fund. Started in the 80s after the oil crash. And last reports was $10.2 billion.
Right.
The legislator elected not to use any of it during this last session. I'm not sure if that was roadblocked or by design. Are there any thoughts to open that rainy day fund?
We didn't use any of the existing funds, but we did tap into the fund in several areas for road construction, and a couple other things too that were infrastructure related. We didn't want to take the fund though and accrue it to existing expenditures. We wanted to put it into one-time expenditures so that the fund would not be a source of revenue towards something else. We're trying to restrain the growth of government spending. So,
is there any thought process around using this next legislative session to help out small businesses?
I would be
food banks.
I would be in 100%, 110% support of the state of Texas doing something to help the businesses that they destroyed as a result of this from the rainy day fund.
In similar nature to the payroll protection program.
Yes, absolutely, and it not as a loan, but as an actual grant. I mean, we destroyed lives. Right across the street from you guys on 1488 is Deacon Baldy's, right? Mm-hmm. And this is funny. You alluded to the fact that I'm a pastor. I'm a Baptist pastor, and
Hey.
What's funny is that my political legacy is that I helped open bars and restaurants. Right?
What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that. But Deacon Baldy's is an example. Joey over there across the street, he's like, dude, I'm shut down. I've been shut down for 4 months, yet I'm going to still owe Montgomery County $60,000 in property taxes. Mm-hmm. How do I survive this? And so we worked with the food trucks and formed a general services agreement, and it was acceptable to the TABC to get them back opened again. And yet, for every one of those, there are 100 other ones that never got open. Their lives were destroyed. 16% of the businesses of the restaurants that we shut down in the state of Texas will not reopen. Those are restaurants that have been open for 30 years or more. And you can feel bad about someone that was in business for 30 years that the state of Texas destroyed, or you can think about the fact that there's some guy and his wife or spouse, they've been saving up to open up a restaurant for 30 years. And they finally open it up in January of 2020. And then one fell swoop, their dream of 30 years is destroyed because of the state of Texas.
It's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. And you know, we're seeing massive numbers of suicides, divorces, domestic violence, spousal abuse. It's awful. It's just awful. And I think the state of Texas owes these people.
From a political perspective, and again, there's sometimes there's kind of that disconnect between citizens and those that are supposed to represent us. Is there any empathy from Congress, from those that are supposed to represent us, of the hardship that's really happening? Because it's sometimes I think there's an assumption that nobody cares. You're from the top.
Yeah.
And people are bleeding, they're hemorrhaging, they're at a total loss. Does anybody notice? Anybody care?
I don't know. I mean, that's a really great question. So, and I talk with Brandon Creighton, Senator Creighton, about this a lot, and it tears at him. It tears at me. And I think it hurts most people. I think that the vast majority of these people are kind of like in their little bubble, and so they just don't see it. They don't interact with people. They interact with the powerful. They interact with the wealthy. They interact with people that, for all intents and purposes, are shielded or immune from economic downturns. These are people that do not live paycheck to paycheck, right? And so they're cool. They feel like they understand what's really going on, but they don't. They don't. It's not that they don't care. It's just outside of their realm. They just can't imagine it.
Is that one of the reasons why you were looking at term limits in politics?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
to kind of get rid of the career politician.
Yeah. Now, and I would just say this: the state of Texas, the average stay there is like 4.5 years. That's it in the Texas legislature.
A little bit more than an NFL player.
What's that?
A little bit more than an NFL player.
Yeah, no, it is. So Texas doesn't really struggle with it as much as they do at the federal level. And part of it is because we only pay $600 a month. You're not going to get rich doing this. You shouldn't get rich doing this. I know some politicians have found a way to monetize it, but the vast majority of people don't. And they just go and they serve 4 to 8 years or whatever, and they come home and do their, run their business.
As a business owner, because you have 2 different businesses, right? How long have you had those?
So I started the construction company back in 2003, and I started the service business in 2007.
Was your dad a carpenter? Like where did that?
It's
where'd that
weird
for construction come from?
So, my dad always, he was always fixing and repairing and doing stuff. And at an early age, I just wanted to do that. So I started taking engineering courses when I started Acclaim Pools, and I just fell in love with it. And I realized that I just have a knack for it, and just really enjoyed it.
As a business owner, husband, dad, you got a lot in your sphere, and then you wanted to step into politics. What was that driver for you where you were like, because you clearly had enough on your plate.
Right.
And it's not like that's going to be an easy add-on to be able to do. Number one, what inspired you? Number two, how do you manage all that?
2008, rocking and rolling, the economy starts slowing down because of the economic downturn. 2009, the legislature passed this pool light safety bill, right? They always give these grand names to these stupid things that they do to impede our freedom. And what it did was it basically sought to regulate our business, and it put hundreds of the little small service companies out of business across the state of Texas, threw people completely out of work. And I was so angry about it that I decided to run for office, and I ran against the guy that was one of the joint authors of the bill, and beat him.
Great story.
It's a David and Goliath thing.
Great story. So Montgomery County, I don't know the exact percentages, but I think it's around 69% voted Republican.
Right.
30% voted Democrat. And in Montgomery County, I saw this. I travel 1488 several times a day. Major thoroughfare, 5 lanes each direction, 60, 70,000 cars a day. On Fridays and Saturdays, leading up to election season, they would do a Trump rally on the corner of 1488 and 2978. Couple hundred people. Trucks, music, flags. It was slowed down traffic quite a bit, which is frustrating because it's already bad enough there.
Right.
And then on Saturdays, they did the same thing, but they did it on the corner of 242 and 1488. During the day, a couple hundred people, and then about 100 yards away, they would do a Biden rally, and there was
one lawn
5,
chair.
6 people, one truck. And I thought it was kind of disheartening because you have some compassion because both sides have some good ideas, both sides have some good sides, both sides have some downsides. What could the citizens do, and what could the legislators do to help bridge the gap so there's not such a polarizing effect between the Trump supporter and the Biden supporter, to where in counties like Montgomery, where it's just overwhelming, to where the Biden supporter really feels like a minority of a minority?
It's hard, right? Because this is the reddest county in a deeply red state, right? So 40% of Ted Cruz's margin of victory came from this county. 43% of Greg Abbott's margin of victory came from this county alone. 46% of Donald Trump's margin of victory came from Montgomery County. This is a deeply red county. But, the only thing I can do is just say my cell phone number is 281-770-7287, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you're struggling, call my office. We'll help you. We did. We helped countless people that they got thrown out of work that were calling the Texas Workforce Commission, and, days and days and days and day after day, trying to get them, only to hear, please leave a voicemail message, only to find out that the voicemail box for the Texas Workforce Commission was full. And so they would call our office. We went to work helping people basically just navigate the Texas Workforce Commission so that they get benefits. And we never asked, are you Republican, are you Democrat, are you Biden supporter, are you Trump supporter? We just wanted to help out.
Great. What can businesses and individuals do to support you in the upcoming campaign that you have?
Come to the Capitol. Speak up. We have a very citizenry involved process. This Texas Capitol is not. It's not our capital. It's the people's house, and we need you guys to show up in January. And when there's legislation that is important to you, come and testify for it. Speak up, and let your voice be heard. Go on social media and start getting involved. We need you to get involved. You know, you look at so many people's Instagram account, Facebook accounts, and Twitter accounts, and there's a lot of good stuff about their family, but there's nothing about the things that impact their family, like the way government is run. Get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Great advice.
There's we're starting to have some big tech companies come to Texas, and there's somewhat of a fear that they're going to California, Texas. Good on one hand. Are they being incentivized to come here?
Oh, they sure are. Yeah, they are. And it's you're picking winners and losers again. And I just don't think there's a place for it. It's the enterprise fund that the governor, it's a slush fund that they use to incentivize these companies to come here, and we shouldn't be doing it. I'm just against it.
From kind of the layman, what does that mean, and how does that impact the state?
Well, what we do is the legislature appropriates money to the governor's fund, enterprise development fund, that he can use to cut deals to bring Amazon, to bring Tesla, to bring HP here. Mm-hmm. And I'm against it. I think it's ridiculous. We don't need to do it. Texas is a great climate. It's a great place for businesses to come. We don't create a lot of unnecessary regulations that you have to navigate through and that you have to spend money on to work around like they do in California. Come here because it's a great place to live and work. But I'm totally against us throwing money at these guys.
Steve, where can people connect with you?
Facebook, Twitter, tothfortexas.com, or my cell, 281-770-7287.
And what's next for you? What do you have upcoming?
Session starts January 12th, and we're just getting ready for it right now. We've got probably 12 or 13 different pieces of legislation that we're working on.
Anything noteworthy? I know that you've done a little bit looking at just kind of the state of cannabis in Texas.
We want to go B2C.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not legalizing. We're just taking it from a jailable offense to a non-jailable offense. And the reality is that across the United States, if you're an inner city kid and you get caught with some an ounce or two of marijuana, you're going to go to jail. If you're a white kid that lives in Montgomery County, you're not going to go to jail. And it creates a sequence from that point forward. It's a cascading thing where the kid that goes to jail has an 80% recidivism rate. The kid that doesn't go to jail, has a recidivism rate about 5%. That's just the reality. And so I just would rather see us turn that into a ticketable offense and help that kid get treatment and keep him out of jail.
Do you think it'll ever be legalized in Texas?
I do think it's probably inevitable that it will be at a federal level. It will be legalized. I don't know that necessarily what Colorado did was a great thing. You talk to law enforcement, you talk to a lot of people that were advocates for full-blown legalization in Colorado, and they're not anymore. So you're not doing anything to hurt the cartels. The cartels want legalization for the very simple reason that the government that will then come in and put this massive tax on it, right? So for a vendor, pot costs this much, and then there's this much of a tax on it. Well, the cartel will come in and price it just 10% under. And here's the problem now is that when someone gets pulled over and they've got a bag of weed in their car, the cop doesn't know if that bag of weed was legally purchased or illegally purchased, which is why the cartels are excited about this. So it's not going to do anything to hurt the cartels. They're not saying, oh, bummer, people are growing weed in California or they're growing weed in Colorado or Texas. It's going to put us out of business. Nothing could be further from the truth.
So recently, Abbott came out and said he's not going to shut down the state.
Right.
Right. Maybe we had something to do with that.
I think collectively everyone did. No, I'm serious, dude. I think collectively he's gotten the message, and I appreciate him for that. I appreciate the fact that he's listening.
I think it's good for him. I think in businesses a lot like government, with respect to humility, and in the onset, the saying is, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And that's what this kind of was. This was unknown foreign territory. But as there became more data, as there became more clarity around it, I think it's very, very important for people to be able to take a left turn when they took a right turn before, or vice versa. So, the decisions I made last week, last month, last year may not have been perfect, but it was the best I thought I could do with the tools and resources I had available. And now it's a new dawn, it's a new day, and let's change course on some things that didn't work. Would be interesting down the road, this will probably be some PhD thesis project for a statistician, is to take the cities and the counties or the states and watch where they had more harsh shutdown regulations versus less, versus the hospitalization and the death rate amongst them. My theory on Montgomery County versus Harris County, I don't think there's a dime's difference with respect to percentages of cases, infections, transmitting, ventilators, deaths, hospitalizations. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a sum zero game. That irrelevant to the nature of the shutdown or the requirement of the mask, I think it's going to be net zero.
Totally. You're absolutely right.
I mean, Hidalgo, Harris County judge, is certainly screaming to, empower her to do what she feels is necessary for the county. But Abbott's like, no, I got it. But there's definitely an outcry for wanting some of that power back for whatever reason, which,
it's the nature of man in 5,000 years of recorded history to gather power, and then once you've got power, to gather more power. It just...
That's well said.
That is the history of man.
Steve, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Fun to be with you.
It's really great to have you. We're definitely going to put all your contacts, social, and everybody for how to get in touch with you. Thanks for standing up for us.
You're welcome.
I say us just as Texans, the greatest country in the United States of America.
Yes, it is.
But again, Steve, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, guys. Cool.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you.
That was fun.
That was a well-rounded conversation within 60 minutes.
Tillman?
Tillman.
Yeah.
Tillman Fertitta. Yeah.
Tillman and Russell got real close last year. I thought Tillman was going to buy Gringos.
Oh, wow.
One time. Yeah.
Have
you read his book, Shut Up and Listen?
No, I haven't. My wife got it for me. I just haven't read it yet, though.
It's a great book. We powered through. He bought a copy for me and for him. We powered through it in...
I wonder how he's doing today.
2 days.
I wonder, relative to everything that's gone on, the hospitality business has just absolutely been decimated by all of this.
96% of revenue went out the door during the shutdown.
Wow. 96%. How do you survive that?
He has very deep pockets.
Golly.
Well, one thing he talked about in his book, he says, get debt even when you don't need it. Because when times are good, they're going to be bad. When times are bad, they're going to be good again. So he has a good few pages around obtaining as much capital on your side so that if you want to use it for whatever reason, to grow or to consolidate or to buy back a public company. So he just has tons of capital access.
Greg Brenneman, this is another one of his things. He wrote a book called Right Away and All at Once. And one of the things he talks about is fortifying your balance sheets, fortified balance sheets. And that's what it is. It's having that kind of bandwidth to go after it in a heartbeat if you need it.
Small businesses got slack during the shutdown. We could probably talk about this a little bit too. Because if an individual household should have 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, so should a small business. Right? And theoretically, sure, right? Who doesn't want to have a big savings account?
Right.
But as small businesses, and even large businesses, you say that much capital in the books, what a waste of opportunity cost. If you're not using that for marketing and for growth and development, for hiring, for training and outreach and customer appreciation and so on, so we're just letting dead money sit dead money.
Oh yeah, completely.
So it's a balancing act. Make sure you have enough capital to survive, but in our environment, we got to grow.
Yeah.
And we grew from being the one-stop barbershop to being.
So this is completely y'all's concept.
Started with my ex-wife now, still a great friend, business partner, in 2015.
How many locations are there around?
51.
Wow.
49 in Texas and 2 in Tennessee.
How creative are they for, let's say the one on 1488 for a shop owner that runs it, manages it.
So we have 16 corporate-owned stores and 36 franchisees, 36 franchise locations. A good franchisee for us is a local, either local business owner or a local employee. And Zach's a perfect franchisee.
Okay.
Zach's a firefighter, good income. His wife's a nurse.
Right.
They don't need this capital. They don't need this capital in order to survive.
Right.
Right. So one of the prohibitive factors around growing a franchise business is largely predicated on SBA loans. And one of the things about an SBA loan is you have to show that you have income otherwise, so you don't need the profit of the business to be able to support your general overhead expenses, such as your mortgage and utilities and food. So perfect scenario for us is we have somebody that's like a firefighter and nurse combo that has a lot of freedom and flexibility in their scheduling and can run the business on the days they're not actively managing their own career and occupation. Average cost to start up for a tune-up is between $250,000 and $300,000 total, all in. That's before any landlords incentives or TI dollars. All right, so if it's an SBA loan, they're putting between $50,000 and $60,000 up, financing the rest over a 10-year time frame. On a sales volume, our goal for sales is around $8,000 a week in sales per location. Puts it right about $424,000 and $30,000 a year. And on that, after debt servicing, if the location's ran properly, it's about 12 to 15% profit margin after the SBA loans are paid. If it's a cash payment deal where there's no SBA loans involved, they're seeing between 18 and 21% profit.
Great.
Cyclical in nature.
Sure.
Our busiest season is our busiest 3 days, right before school, right before Thanksgiving, right before Christmas. So this will be our busiest week of the year.
I was surprised. Like every time I go in to the store on 1488, my son goes there as well. He loves it. When I told him I got my haircut there illegally, he's like, "Dad, I love that place. That place is awesome." He loves bourbon.
Yeah, perfect.
Who doesn't?
Let's go hang out. You know, so when we developed this, I just had to get the run-of-the-mill.
I don't want to. He doesn't love bourbon, but
Loves the idea of it.
It's okay.
I was tired. It's just a cool concept.
I was getting tired of getting my haircut at the just kind of the run-of-the-mill haircut places where it's in and out chop shops. And not to name any specific concepts because it's not my position to throw other brands under the bus because they'll have their upside. But we're not of the opinion that you should be from sitting down in the chair to leaving the environment 8 to 10 minutes because every haircut's different. Every texture hair, the personality of the client, what they want. So some haircuts might be 8, 12 minutes. Some might be 15, 20 minutes. Whatever it takes to make sure it's a perfect haircut and that relationship developed between the stylist and the client is most important to us. The economics make sense for us to be able to do it if we only have to do 2 haircuts an hour. That's the goal for every stylist to do 2 haircuts an hour. It's 30 minutes a client. We can definitely do that.
Do you guys ever read Raving Fans? So it's not enough to satisfy a customer. The whole idea is you got to turn them into a raving fan because think about how many times you've gone to a restaurant and the food sucked. It was cold when it got there. The waiter or waitress wasn't all that friendly. And you go to the cashier and they say, how was everything? You say, I was fine. You know, you're satisfied. We've become satisfied with subpar, sub-quality service in the United States, right? So it only takes one more restaurant down the street that opens up where the food's awesome, where the service is spectacular, where there's incredible value add, right? Then you become a raving fan, and you'll never go back to that other place. And when the other place closes, they're like, wow, I don't know what happened, man. All my customers were satisfied. Why did we go out of business? Because they were satisfied, but you didn't create raving fans. And that's the whole thing when I went into tune-up. You go in there, and it's an extraordinary experience. You create a raving fan. For every one person that you satisfy, they're only going to tell 3 people. For every one person you piss off, they're going to tell 12. But when you create a raving fan, you create all these evangelists of your business, and that's what you guys do so well.
People's behavior are manipulated or changed by 2 ways, either manipulation or inspiration.
Right.
You know, manipulation is that short-term sale, the promotion, the text campaign, the whatever. But those that really love your brand, they love the experience. There is what is the I think it's a scripture that says love covers the multitude of evil. Yeah. I think, but when you really love a business, you know that they're going to have an off day, and it's like I got it right. It's not a big deal. right? You'll come back again because you're inspired by the experience that you get. There's an intrinsic value that fulfills a need sometimes you can't really pinpoint, right? But you feel special, you feel appreciated, you feel valued, you feel like you come to a place where you belong. It's like a Cheers, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
And you sit down and it's not just a haircut. It's a time to kind of step away. I told one of my buddies, I'm like, it's the only place that you can step away from your honey to-do list and go, I'm gonna go get my haircut. And there's also a bar. You can't just say, I'm gonna go to the bar for a couple hours in the middle of a Saturday or Sunday. Not happening. But you can certainly step into a tune-up and kind of have an escape, just come and be a guy for a little bit and hang out,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very cool. It seems like everybody there is enjoying what they're doing. So this is, you brought a scripture verse, I'll give you one too. So this is from David, King David. Psalm 37:4, he said, delight yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. Meaning that if you want a BMW, God will give you a BMW, but love God, enjoy his presence in your life, and he'll tell your heart what to seek after and what it will find joy and fulfillment in. And I think at the end of the day, most people really do enjoy serving others and getting that attaboy, that pat on the back of, man, that was wonderful, that was great, that was a wonderful experience. That's a noble thing to desire and to find a sense of fulfillment in. And I think you guys do it really well.
Attitude is reflective of leadership.
Yeah.
There's just Anthony's story of how he came up, and to be in a position as a CEO, it is the top level position of servitude. And, I hear him on the phone with franchisees. I hear him on the phone with customers. We'll get emails through the website from customers. He'll call them straight up. I don't know how many CEOs actually have that much of a pulse of not only their customer, but also the team. He referenced walking to the back and talking to the dishwasher. He does the same thing. Matter of fact, he'll get up to Balanced Foods down the street here in Magnolia. He'll hop into the kitchen 4 a.m. Then he'll go to work out.
Every day.
And then he'll come here, right? And he'll, deal with the multitude of texts and phone calls from staff and franchisees and counterparts and owners. I mean, it's a shit show. It's crazy, like to hear every day. But the thing that you'll always see, and that I still think it's one of the greatest testaments, is it's action. That's the separator, right? And when you walk into any location, he drove up to Dallas and hopped into a VIP event. It was one of the locations did a VIP event for their VIP members, and he showed up. I mean, VIPs didn't know who he was, didn't even know he was coming, but he showed up, and it reflects and it inspires the team. It inspires people to realize there's so much heart in this. Coming from an idea that launched in 2015 to still seeing a guy that, for a lot of companies, could sit on the perch, right? And watch his fingerlings do their work. But usually it's a race for who's here first. But it might be the office first.
It's not all bad in the stores. They hang out with guys and staff and everything and drink whiskey, and it's not all. It's not the toughest life. We lost our CIO, Chief Information Officer of the company. He's a friend of mine still to this day. I've known him since 2008 or so, 12, 13 years. I was in his wedding, vacations together, the whole 9 yards. One of his gripes coming on board with this company, he worked with me for a previous company at My Fit Foods and then left and went to work at CB&I, big giant, right? Behemoth of a company. And in those big corporations, I kind of consider you become corporate on me, because you're only within your little bubble, right? And you only talk to the person you report to, and you talk to the team that reports to you, and that's it. And you never go outside your bubble. You're not even allowed to. You don't even thinking about talking to somebody else. You don't go to 10 offices over, the next building over, or any other departments. And it always frustrated me, because one of his gripes was, you spend more time at the stores than you do with your own team. My team meaning my direct reports.
Right.
And right now I have 12 direct reports that report to me. At that time it was 14. And I said, yeah, you're 100% right. Like, you're the CIO of the company. You're probably the technically smartest person in the company. You know exactly what to do. What the hell can I tell you that you know what to do? I'm going to spend all the time I possibly can at these locations down specific. And it remembers me back to in 2012, did a capital raise for My Fit Foods with TSG Consumer Group. Big $3 billion, at the time they were a $3 billion equity fund. Now they're a $9 billion equity fund. Chuck Esserman, as the CEO of it. Chuck used to work directly for Mitt Romney at Bain. He has a business. He has a math degree from MIT and then a master's from Stanford. Went to work at Bain Capital directly from Mitt Romney. Then branched out his own. Just a wicked smart. They're the exact same gripe, because I always had a thing where I go to 2 locations a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually start in the morning at a location,
Right.
and then I end my day at a location. And they thought it was a waste of my time.
Oh my gosh. So
You need to spend more of your time doing CEO duties. I'm like, I got a whole damn team. Right?
Yeah.
I got a whole. Then what am I doing, right? If I see my job as a CEO being in a lot like what you spend your time, being as a CEO of Montgomery County, almost in a nature, right? In your district, CEO of your district, is spending as much time with the constituents as possible.
I spend way more time than most guys do, but that's where I get my joy. So that I'm going to date myself. This is a book that came out 20 some odd years ago while you guys were still in junior high. It's called. It's written by the CEO of Loud Cloud, and he had this theory. It's called the law of crappy people. You ever heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
It's the law of crappy people, meaning your first hire and the people you hire are slightly less committed to the vision than you are, and the people that they hire are slightly less committed to the vision than those, and so on and so forth. As it gets farther down the pyramid, the vision gets further and further away from its original design. So the first group of people that you hire have got to be absolutely sold out to the vision, which yours are, right? Which enables you to go and really start proselytizing at the in-store level to make sure that the vision is protected and guarded and is advanced.
We call it the telephone game. We sat in a circle and there's 10 of us, and I sent the sentence in your ear. By the time I got back around, it may be half, right? Same
Yeah.
with the vision. So oftentimes I find myself, I have to say it 150% of what I really want. So when it comes back around, 90% is success.
It's still
enough.
there. Yeah. No, it's true. It really is. Yeah. Jim Rohn called it management by wandering. Remember that? If you read any of his stuff, and it's that you cannot stay in your office. You can't stay in that CEO paradigm. You'll miss where the vision is going awry, and where communication isn't working. Good for you. That's cool.
I think there's this assumption or even an expectation that we're in this watchpreneur era where everybody wants to be a CEO of something. They want the title, but the real job that is required to be effective, not just hold a title, but be effective in that role, is different. And unless you sit in that chair and you carry that weight on a daily basis, theoretically, you may have ideas of how you think he should do or the decisions that you think he should make. But ultimately, unless you're in that chair carrying that weight, you don't know the priorities that need to be done on a daily basis that he carries on a daily basis.
Right.
Everybody, critics are always on the sidelines, right? It's easy to criticize from the sidelines. But until you're in that position, you just don't know what it takes. And when you carry the weight of the stack of unemployment forms that came through during the pandemic and the look on his face that I would see, and just the responsibilities that go with that are immense. And so many people look at the idea of, entrepreneurship or business ownership. I'd want to own my own business one day. There are a lot of business owners right now that have had to carry that weight, and it was kind of a surprise. But when you look at somebody and they have a pulse, they get up and there's a certain routine that they follow, and you start to wonder, rather than criticize, go, how are they doing that? Versus, why are they not doing this for me, or why is this happening to me? But why are they doing that? You look at a guy he was a CEO of an 8-figure company who came from grinding at a very young age with a very hard vision for himself and a momentum that he has to carry. That is infectious to other people.
It is.
And that carries over. But like you said, you got to go into it 150% because it's going to trickle. And, that, again, from everybody's got an opinion about something, about what they think you should do better. Just like citizens talking to a politician, well, I think you need to do this. And, when it's coming from a self-serving position. But in a business, to be effective every day, and what he has to do, or what anybody in a position of of real influence to make decisions, unless you've been in that position, unless you have carried that weight, and it goes beyond a title, where a lot of people look at getting a title or they get a promotion as the reward. Now they can sit back.
Yeah.
No, that's when the real work begins. Now you got to earn that every day, you know, and the involvement, the engagement of every franchisee and every store manager and every staff member from every position, they come to work to, you know, to create a livelihood. We want them to be inspired. You want them to look at it from an eagle eye perspective, but they never will, because it's two different positions. They're looking at it from their eagle eye of their life and their bills and their requirements and their pains and their struggles. There's a lot to really influence people to really buy into a culture. And that's where a lot of people miss it, as they get so caught up in, you know, what they think they should have or what somebody else has and they don't have enough of. But, you know, I've heard frustration from him of where it's like, God, can't you just do it? Like, you know, I mean, the opportunities that we're given in any job is, if you go to work and you're not trying to earn that role from a position of gratitude, you're coming into it given mediocre at best, because you feel like the company, the job, something, you know, you're deserving of something and you got to earn it. And every day he gets up and he goes to the gym and he goes to Balanced, and he comes in, he's on the phone, hear his phone go off 900 million times every day, and answers just about every phone call. And people shouldn't criticize when you look at anybody that has amassed any type of accomplishment, but go, how did they do it? Not, I wish I had it, but how did they do that?
Yeah.
How does he get up at 4 a.m., go to Mount, then go work out and grind like he does, and then do all the stuff that he does, and then still continue to run the day to day as well with 12, 14 direct reports, and then take the phone calls of, you know, a ton of people from the store level. Like there's a lot in business ownership, you know that. And then you're also taking phone calls from constituents, and there's a lot of weight to that. And
in the midst of that, though, you can't be, as a CEO, you can't be constantly swimming upstream. There's got to be some harmony with the key people in your life that are in the organization. So when many years ago, when I worked for Johnson & Johnson, they flew me around the United States doing practice management consulting. And one of the things that I would encourage them to do, I'd say, okay, you do an annual review with all of your employees, but with your key people, you need to be doing quarterly one-on-ones. So once every 3 months, and you say to that key person, I'm not responsible for this quarterly one-on-one. You are. So you're responsible for getting with my admin, scheduling it with me. And then in that quarterly one-on-one, it's not a review of of necessarily your numbers. It's a review of how are you doing? How are we doing? What are your personal goals? How can I help you with those personal goals? So you're making it more of an intimate relationship, which my father, the greatest generation, that, you know, my dad was always like, man, never become friends, never get close to the people that you manage and that you lead. You should never want to do that. And so early in my career, I kind of took that to heart, and I think it was bad counsel for my dad. And
different era.
It was a completely different era, right? Yeah, and maybe it really worked well for them. But I don't think it works well with people. They've got to know that you care. They've got to know that you know what their family's going through and what hardships they face, or else it's just a paycheck. And your key people will not buy into the vision as a result of it.
He has simple criteria. You know, he wants to do business with and work with those people he can sit down and have a beer with.
Yeah.
Or whiskey or tequila, whatever. Yeah. With your companies, do you, how many staff do you have?
12.
Yeah. How long have they been with you?
Some 8 and 10 years. 8 years, 10 years. Yeah. My wife really runs the business now. So, day-to-day operations, she runs it. She has her MBA, kids are grown up, and this has been like perfect for her. So she kind of just stepped into the role and just started taking more and more stuff off my plate. So, yeah.
Tillman Fertitta said, you ask anybody that has worked with him as long as they have, and they'll tell you, and I quote him, he said, I'm the hardest person to work for, but they won't want to work for anybody else. which says a lot, right? Because he keeps driving that standard, that expectation, but they keep rising up to it. And there's a natural part of people where you kind of like that.
Right.
Right. Because you kind of need that level to keep being raised and keep being expected to do more, because it just drives the best out of people.
Tillman knows who he is, though, right? And so he knows who he is, and he knows what he can get out of people. I don't know if you guys read Steve Jobs' book. It was his autobiography, and I think it published right after his death. But you read this book, and you're like, man, this guy was a slave driver. He was a slave master. He was could be one of the nastiest people in the whole world. And you look at what he achieved. And it's funny because after the book came out, there were a lot of CEOs, young CEOs that kind of adopted this autocratic, nasty, tyrannical kind of role as a CEO. And they said, well, worked for Jobs, it'll work for me. No, not necessarily. It worked for Jobs. And, I wonder if Apple will be around today if Steve Jobs had lived, because as you read through the book, a lot of people they fell away. They fell out of his universe because they just couldn't do it anymore. They just were so burned out. And the key thing about Tillman is Tillman knows who he is, and he knows how to manage people, and he knows how hard he can push, and he knows how much he has to invest in people. And I don't think most people get that in leadership.
Anthony, you have a core group of people that have kind of been with you from my fit days and been with you for many years. What do you think keeps them connected to you? Because you've got a circle that have been with you through a lot over the years.
It's the same as growth. People love the growth. It's a lot easier to be a CEO of a growing business or a series of growing businesses to be a stagnant business or a retracting business. Anybody remember the last CEO of Blockbuster Video or Radio Shack? I can imagine just the Circuit City, the layoffs, the pullback, the drawdown, right? The negative. We went through this in March and April. We do all this work to build a company, and then just very, very little to take it down. It takes 6 weeks to build a company. It takes us 2 days to take 6 to 7 weeks to build a location. It takes us 2 days to rip the stuff out of it. So I think people love the fact that we're at least giving it our all to grow tomorrow. Our plan for next year, we have a 2021 plan. We'll end this year at 54 locations between the three concepts. Our goal next year is to surpass 100.
Wow. Very cool.
Regardless of economic conditions or COVID impact or so on and so forth.
Awesome.
So we'll grow.
Neat.
Grow.
Rule of growth. Professional growth leads to personal growth. Professional stagnation leads to personal stagnation, so on and so forth. So you can kind of leverage this. Even though it's stressful, they can leverage this growth to grow on the personal end.
Self-confidence is rooted in progress. Without progress, you lose self-confidence, right?
Yeah.
You need the grind. We need the grind.
Yeah.
Being isolated doesn't help, right?
Yep.
We need that sense of purpose.
Yep.
We don't need the redundancy. Same, that old mentality, you go to work for GM after you leave the Army in 25 years, you retire and you get a gold Rolex and you get a 2% pay bump each year.
Right.
Right. And then your medical benefits increase by 4% a year. So you're really losing 2%.
Yeah.
And then by the time you retire, you pass away in a few years because you're just so
And you got to hawk the watch
boring,
to make retirement.
right? Assembly line workers, those are of the old age.
Can you imagine retiring? I'm not going to retire.
I did for a month. I killed all the flowers. After I sold my fit, I went to Vegas. It's a good weekend. It's a long weekend, Steve. I'll tell you what. Had to hang over for a couple days afterwards. And then I didn't really know what I wanted to do because it came unexpected. And I watered my flowers. I had a rose bed along the whole line of the property, water them every single day, 3-4 times. They all died. I killed them all. And I go, the worst landscaping guy ever. Tried to find something to do.
That's great.
It's funny, the older generation was, work to retire. Then you retire, then you can live.
Yeah.
And then you're retired and you die 2 years later because you don't have a sense of purpose, right? We're in an era now where, people are certainly working longer. But it's almost, I love to work. I love to work. If I'm idle, I get bored. I get antsy. Like I got to open up my laptop. I got to get on my phone. I got to research. I got to listen. I got to work. Like I love to, I know some people may think that's ridiculous. I love my wife and my kids, but when they go to bed, I go back to work. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
And thank God for our technological age that we can open up the laptop or do all the work from our phone. I love it. And I can't ever foresee not working, you know?
Yeah. 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 I'm the same way. My dad is 94, and I don't, after he sold the business to my brother, he didn't stop. He just continued. He just shifted into something else, and it keeps your mind fresh. It keeps you on your toes, keeps you alert, keeps you learning. It keeps you needy, right? We say of veterans that the reason they struggle when they get off the plane coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan is because in one fell swoop they lose their sense of mission, sense of purpose, sense of unit cohesion, and a job. And all four of those things are critically important for our lives to stay healthy and strong and vibrant all the way through into your 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Like you, I have to go raise some capital.
I do too,
So
man. I
I'm
got to
gonna
get to work.
I have a meeting here
That's a wrap.
in 25 minutes or
fun.
so. Potential investor.
Thanks.
Steve, I appreciate you. Sure, we'll see you at some restaurant or
Yeah, you will.
something soon.
You will.